Hey, it's me, Saul, and welcome to this Duel Links discussion video. I'm gonna get right to the point. I am of the firm belief that Mystical Space Typhoon is a bait card, and I'm gonna go through the reasons why I feel that with you, right? This is a discussion, so hear out my opinions, hear out what I'm thinking, and let me know down below how you feel about it, what your thoughts on it are, but let me just put the facts to you as I see them to be. MST came out on February 28th, 2021, and it was in the Antinomic Theory box. Now that box was largely not that influential. It did give us TGs, but one of the best things in the box was MST. It's a staple card from the TCG. Everyone loves it. There's a whole meme around it surrounding, MST does not negate, blah, blah, blah. All good and fine. Now, when it came out, there were a lot of people saying, oh, we should have gotten this way back when, because we've had Cosmic Cyclone for ages. It's a cool card, but it's not essential. It's not something that we really, really need to get. Right? So the game goes on, time progresses, and MST does find its place in the meta because, because it destroys spells and traps. If you destroy a Treacherous Trap Hole, then that means, or if you just destroy any trap card that your opponent has, then Treacherous Trap Hole becomes a dead card in their deck, right? And Treacherous Trap Hole is very prominent in the meta. A lot of people like to use that card, and so that's kind of where MST found its place. That's where it became a viable or even sometimes better alternative to Cosmic, which that seems decent, right? Now, I'm stating that because I want you to know that I know that it does have a value in the meta, but this is why I think it's a bait card. Now, as early as way earlier in the year, Pendulum Summoning was found in the files for Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, and we recently had it confirmed that Arc 5 World is coming to Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links this year. Now, I recently made a video talking about the cards that you need before Pendulum Summoning comes out, so you can check that out. But one of the primary things that I talked about in that video is the mechanics of Pendulum Monsters. Now, if you don't know, Pendulum Monsters are main deck cards that have monster effects and spell effects. You can use them as monsters on the field, or you can place them in what's called the Pendulum Zone as continuous spells, effectively, right? They're monster cards and they're spell cards, and that's what makes cards like MST relevant, because back row removal works on these cards when they are on the field being used as spell cards. Now, here's where it becomes problematic though. Pendulum Monsters have a mechanic whereby if they get destroyed and sent to the graveyard, they don't go to the graveyard. There's a place called the Face-Up Extra Deck that will be introduced into the game when Pendulum Monsters come out, most likely. And so when a Pendulum Monster gets destroyed, rather than going to the graveyard, it floats into the Face-Up Extra Deck. Now, how the Face-Up Extra Deck mechanic works is when you Pendulum Summon, Pendulum Summoning is its own beast, and I'll explain how you do it later on, but for the purposes of this video, just understand that Pendulum Summoning basically takes all of the monsters in your hand that are between a certain level and lets you splash them onto the field. Now, what the Face-Up Extra Deck does is, if you have monsters in the Face-Up Extra Deck, i.e. Pendulum monsters that were destroyed earlier in the duel, when you Pendulum Summon on each turn that you do it, you can bring those monsters out if they meet the level requirements for the Pendulum Summon, which means that those resources aren't actually lost. They're just put somewhere else for your opponent to bring back later on. Now, bring this back to MST. MST targets a spell card on the field and destroys it. So you give up one card to destroy your opponent's back row. Generally speaking, you and your opponent will be going -1 in that situation, so it's a hand neutral instance. But when Pendulum Monsters come out, if you try and use MST on one of the Pendulum Monsters, yes, you destroy it, and the Pendulum effect that it's giving them they'll no longer have access to it, but rather than that card going to the graveyard, it goes to the Face-Up Extra Deck for them to use again as a free resource. Meanwhile, you've still gone -1. I mean, you could argue that your opponent has gone -1 in that instance, but it's a resource that they can just splash right back out on their next turn. So in terms of card advantage and all of those, resources are a very big important part of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And you've lost a resource, and maybe you've thrown a wrench in your opponent's plan, but you haven't made them really lose anything because they can just bring it right back out. The best way to deal with Pendulum Monsters is by banishing them, so a card like Cosmic Cyclone would be vastly superior to deal with Pendulum Monsters when they come out, in my opinion anyway. This is all speculative, and this is just me using what I know to kind of predict how things are going to go. right? So MST will drop so far in value, in my opinion, because it's just not it's not good resource management, right? So I think it'll drop so far value, in my opinion, that they had to give us MST when they did, because they knew that Arc 5 was coming out, and no one is going to care about MST when Arc 5 comes out if you release it after the point at which you release Pendulum Monsters. And so they didn't give it to us ages ago, but they know it's a good TCG card. You know, people are so into the card and everything that they would go for it. So they gave it to us, made it the best card in a box that is relatively mid, so that people would jump after it, not knowing that Pendulums were coming out later in the year. I personally don't think MST is going to be great in the Pendulum era, especially if Pendulums land on their feet and do well when they get here. And I mean, even later on, like, they're not going to... Pendulums will eventually increase in power, which will make MST reduce in power, in my opinion. Now, February was 5 or 6 months ago, and if you're a competitive player, you want to be on the bleeding edge of whatever is the best thing for the meta. So if you wanted to go into MST for that as a competitive player who's spending money on the game, then sure, use MST while it's good, you know, dealing with Treacherous Trap Hole and all that good stuff. But as a free-to-play player, seeing all the hype around MST and going into it with the limited resources that you have, only for Pendulums to come out and potentially make MST irrelevant, I don't think that feels like bait to me. I'm gonna keep it a $1.50 with you, right? I personally think that MST is a bait card, and those are the reasons as to why. Because Konami knew that Pendulums were coming out, and I just don't think it's a coincidence that they gave us this card that would be completely irrelevant in the Pendulum era, right before it. You know, it just seems it seems like a calculated move, in my opinion. I don't know. So let me know how you feel about it down below. If you've already invested in MST, then I guess you get to be the guinea pigs for us and see if MST is still relevant when Pendulums come out. Because like I said, this is all speculation. This is just what I think is going to be the case when Pendulums roll around the corner. And if you didn't get MST, I can't tell you what to do with your money. I can't tell you what to do with your resources, but just looking at what's coming and just on paper, the mechanics that are about to be introduced into the game, MST does not make as much sense as Cosmic Cyclone, in my opinion, right? Especially because since Cosmic Cyclone is in such an old box, it qualifies for the 50% gem sale that comes around once or twice a year. So you can just wait for that and get Cosmic over MST. That's just my personal view. You can think I'm wrong, and I completely understand. Let me know how you're feeling, and I'll talk to you later. Have a great day, and bye.